Danny fell into step beside him. The streets of Darkwater were already emptying, everyone moving inside earlier than usual. "I'm not joking around, Ryan," Danny said. "I've heard it. 2 years back, right outside my house, late at night." "Heard what?" Danny went quiet for a moment. "My mom's voice. My mom has been gone for 6 years, Ryan." Ryan didn't have an answer for that. The next day had the particular quality of days before storms. Everyone moving with purpose, getting things done early, watching the sky. By late afternoon, every porch in Darkwater was empty. By evening, every door in town was shut. Ryan and his wife Sarah sat in the living room. The television was on, but neither of them was watching it. Around 10 o'clock, Sarah turned off most of the lights. She was trying to seem casual about it, but her eyes kept going to the door. "You doing okay?" Ryan asked. She gave a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ask me again in the morning." At 11, the town was so quiet that Ryan could hear the bayou moving somewhere in the dark beyond the tree line. He checked the locks. He wasn't sure when he decided to do that, but he did it. Just before midnight, there was a knock at the door. Both of them went still. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered. "Yes." A pause. Then it came again. 3 knocks, even impatient. "It's probably just," Ryan started. Then a voice. "Ryan, Ryan, open up. Please, Ryan." The color left Ryan's face entirely. It was Danny's voice. Perfectly, completely Danny. The particular rhythm of how Danny said his name, the slight roughness in his throat that had been there since high school. "Ryan, man, I need help. Please." Sarah grabbed his arm. "Don't. What if it's actually him? What if something happened? Ryan, remember what Elder James said." The voice came again, more urgent now. "There's something behind me, Ryan. I'm serious, man. Please open the door." Ryan was already at the door. His hand was on the deadbolt. Rotted and collapsed. Cobwebs hung from the vaulted ceiling like curtains. Broken stained glass let in thin streaks of moonlight, and at the far end stood an old statue of Jesus, cracked with age, its painted eyes somehow following them as they stepped inside. Then a voice rose out of the shadows, slow, tired, ancient. "Children, why have you come here?" An old priest sat hunched in the back pew, his face deeply lined, his eyes sunken with something heavier than exhaustion. "This place is cursed," he said quietly. "A spirit walks these walls. A nun, murdered in this church over a century ago. She made a pact with something dark to survive what was done to her. She is no longer entirely human, and she is no longer at peace." Dev laughed it off. Simran crossed her arms, unconvinced. But Arian felt something he couldn't explain, a pressure in the air, a weight settling over the room. Then the one dim bulb flickering above them died completely. The church went black. Scene 3, Sister Agnes appears. 3 phone flashlights clicked on at once, beams sweeping across broken stone and rotted wood. From the back of the church came a sound. Low, rhythmic, deeply wrong. A hymn, but sung backward, the notes bending in a way no human throat should manage. Dev moved toward it, flashlight raised, calling out something brave and stupid. In the far corner stood a nun, motionless, facing the wall, black habit and white veil, utterly still. "Hey," Dev said, stepping closer. "You okay?" She didn't move. He reached out and touched her shoulder. She turned. Her eyes were entirely white, no iris, no pupil. Her lips were cracked and black. And from somewhere in her throat came a sound that was not a scream and not a word. Something between a growl and a shriek that didn't belong to anything living. Dev stumbled back, but before he could run, she pressed one hand flat against his chest and sent him flying across the church. He hit the stone wall and didn't get up. "I think I like Jenna. Has for a while now, actually." A small, apologetic laugh. "You're great, Maya. Just not like that." The rest of the ride passed in silence. When they pulled up outside her building, Maya got out without a word, stood on the sidewalk while his taillights disappeared into the rain, and only then let herself fall apart. Inside, soaked and shaking, she yanked open her dresser drawer, pawing through it without really seeing what was in front of her, just needing something, anything, to make the ache in her chest stop for 1 minute. Her hands were trembling so badly, she barely registered the strange object sitting at the back of the drawer until her fingers closed around it. An hourglass. Old, the wood dark with age, the glass somehow still warm. She hadn't put it there. She'd never seen it before in her life. You're the one who didn't get what she wanted. Maya spun around. A woman stood in the corner of her room, ash pale, eyes like wet stone, dressed in something that looked older than the building itself. Maya's back hit the wall. Who? How did you get in here? It doesn't matter how I got in. What matters is what you're holding. The woman's gaze dropped to the hourglass. Make a wish and turn it over. As the sand falls, your wish falls into place beside it. But remember, once it starts, it doesn't stop on its own. What are you talking about? What is this? When Maya blinked, the woman was gone. She told herself it was exhaustion, grief, a very bad dream. Until she opened her eyes the next morning and the hourglass was still sitting on her nightstand, exactly where it shouldn't have been. She stared at it a long time before she finally picked it up, turned it over, and whispered the only wish that mattered to her: I want Ethan to love me. That same afternoon, walking to class, Ethan appeared in front of her out of nowhere, and the look on his face was nothing like the one from the rainy car ride. It was something closer to wonder. She spun around. The room was empty. The door was closed. The window was latched. She sat very still for a long moment. Then she picked up her highlighter and went back to her textbook. He keeps you around out of obligation, the voice said. You know that, right? You've always known it. It was coming from nowhere. From everywhere. From inside the air itself. Sophia put down her highlighter. She pressed her hands flat on the desk and breathed slowly. She told herself it was stress. She told herself it was the rain and the late hour and the 3 cups of coffee she had drunk since 7. She went to bed and lay in the dark and told herself that in the morning it would seem like nothing. In the morning it did not seem like nothing. Because it happened again. While she was making breakfast. While she was driving to campus. While she was sitting in her 9 o'clock class pretending to take notes. Nobody in that classroom actually wants to talk to you. Your study group includes you because they need your notes. Not because they like you. Daniel counts the days until you graduate and move out. You're the only one who doesn't see it. The voice was always just on the edge of audibility, always right next to her ear, always phrased in the specific way that landed deepest because it said the things Sophia had sometimes thought herself in her lowest moments, the thoughts she had always dismissed as irrational, but that now, with the voice repeating them in that calm, certain tone, felt less like anxiety and more like truth. She did not tell anyone. She was studying psychology. She knew exactly what it would sound like. 3 weeks in, Sophia's best friend Amber Collins showed up at her apartment unannounced on a Saturday afternoon with iced coffee and the specific expression of someone who has been worried for a while and has finally decided to say so. You've been weird, Amber said, without preamble, setting the coffees on the kitchen table. And I say that with love. You're not answering texts. You skipped book club twice. You look like you haven't slept properly in a week. I'm fine, Sophia said. It's just exam season. Sophia, Amber, she's performing for you. The voice said, right next to Sophia's ear. She's not here because she's worried. She's here because she wants to feel like a good friend. There's a difference. Sophia looked at Amber across the table, at her open, genuinely concerned face, and felt the voice's words land anyway, felt them slide in under her defenses the way they always did, felt them take root. I'm fine, she said again, more firmly. Really, thank you for coming by. Amber left an hour later, confused and hurt in a way she did not fully express. As she walked to her car, she told herself to give Sophia space. Sophia watched from the window and felt the distance between them like a physical thing. That night, Sophia saw it for the first time. She was standing at the bathroom mirror brushing her teeth. The light above the mirror was the only light on. The rest of the apartment was dark. She was looking at her own reflection, not really seeing it, thinking about the exam on Monday. Then her reflection smiled. She had not smiled. Sophia's toothbrush dropped into the sink. She stared at the mirror. Her reflection stared back, and then very slowly her reflection tilted its head to one side, the way you tilt your head when you are curious about something, and its lips formed two words she could not hear but could read. Found you. Sophia turned on every light in the apartment and called Daniel and told him she thought she might be coming down with something and could he come over. She did not tell him about the mirror. She did not tell him about the voice, but she held it together a little better with him there. And when he fell asleep on her couch, she finally slept too. And in the morning, the mirror was just a mirror, and she told herself again that it was stress. She was running out of things to tell herself. 6 weeks after the first whisper, Sophia went to see Pastor James Whitfield at St. Philip's Church on Church Street. She did not go as a parishioner. She went because she had read his name in a library book about paranormal experiences in the Charleston Lowcountry, where he was described as someone with 30 years of experience dealing with things that did not fit neatly into conventional categories. She sat across from him in his office and told him everything. She expected skepticism. She got careful attention. When she finished, Pastor Whitfield was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Tell me about the house on Cypress Hill Road." Sophia went still. "I didn't mention any house." "No," he said. "You didn't." He told her about the Hargrove house, about the family that had built it in the 1890s, about the patriarch who had become obsessed with occult practices, about what the family records suggested he had invited into that house in exchange for prosperity, about how the family had died one by one after that, about the 4 rooms on the 2nd floor, about the 4th room that no one talked about. Sophia listened with her hands folded in her lap and her face completely still. "The entity that lives in that house," Pastor Whitfield said carefully, "does not announce itself. It finds people who are vulnerable in a specific way, people who already doubt themselves, people who already wonder whether they are loved or valued. It doesn't create those doubts. It finds the ones that are already there and feeds them, amplifies them, makes them louder and louder until the person can't hear anything else. Until they're isolated," Sophia said quietly. "Until they're alone," he agreed, "which is when it has the most control." For days later, against every rational instinct she possessed, Sophia drove to Cypress Hill Road. It was raining. It was always raining in these situations, and she was aware enough to notice the cliché and not care because she needed to see it. She needed to understand what she was dealing with in the way that psychologists need to understand things, concretely and directly. The gate was rusted open. The driveway was overgrown. The house loomed at the end of it, enormous and dark, every window filled with 30 years of grime. The front door opened before she touched it. Inside smelled like old wood and something else, something she did not have a word for, something that was not quite rot, and not quite cold, and not quite the smell of a space where nothing living had been for a long time. She stood in the foyer and let her eyes adjust to the dim light coming through the dirty windows. Stairs. She climbed them. First room. Empty. Bare floorboards, plaster walls, a fireplace with the grate rusted to the back wall. Second room. Empty. A broken window. Rain coming in on the sill. Third room. Empty. A single nail in the wall where something had once hung. Fourth room. Door closed. And written on the door in what looked like old dark paint, or something darker than paint, 3 words. "Do not enter." "Open it," the voice said, right next to her ear, almost gentle. "You came all this way. Open it." Sophia put her hand on the doorknob. She opened it. The room was large and bare and cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature outside. And in the center of the far wall, floor to ceiling, was a mirror. An enormous antique mirror in a tarnished black frame, its surface slightly clouded with age. Sophia could see her own reflection in it, but the reflection looked slightly wrong, slightly too sharp, like a photograph of her rather than a mirror image. She stood in the doorway and looked at her reflection. Her reflection looked back. Then it smiled. "You opened the door," her reflection said. It used her voice exactly, perfectly, every inflection. "You did what I said, just like always." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in 5 seconds. Sophia's. Exactly what you needed in a friend. And when the time was right, she gestured at the classroom around them. Here you are, fearful face. Brianna spoke first. Her voice was very quiet and very direct. Cassandra, you wanted to be a teacher. I am a teacher. Then you know that what you just described isn't teaching, Brianna said. You trapped us. You deceived us. You used a year of fake friendship as a tool to imprison two people. Is that really the school you wanted to open? Broken heart. Cassandra said nothing. You said you wanted to teach kids who couldn't afford the opportunities they deserved, Maya said. You wanted to give people something. That was your dream. Keeping us here against our will. That's not giving anything to anyone. That's just taking. That's what those men did to you, crying face. The silence in the underwater classroom was absolute. Something moved across Cassandra's face. Not anger. Not the cold control she had been maintaining. Something older and more human and much more painful. Broken heart. I was so angry, she said. The steadiness in her voice was gone. For so long, I did everything right. Everything. I worked for every single thing I had, and they took it in 30 seconds. And nothing happened to them. Nobody came. Nobody cared. And I was down here and I was so. She stopped. Her hands, which had been clasped neatly in front of her, were pressed flat against the desk now. Pressed down, like she needed the weight of something real. I lost myself, she said. I got so angry that I stopped being who I was, and I didn't even notice it happening. Crying face. Maya crossed the room. She sat in the student's desk directly in front of Cassandra's teacher's desk, like she was in class. Then find your way back, Maya said. You said you wanted to build something. You wanted to give people something. You built all of this. She looked around at the impossible underwater school with its chalk-smelling corridors and its too attentive students and its black-windowed classrooms. You have always known this. She tried to fight it. Some days she could. Some days she listened to the voice tell her that her brother did not actually love her, and some part of her believed it. The part that had always been afraid it was true. The part that the voice had spent 6 weeks carefully cultivating. On those days, she was short with Daniel, cold with Amber, difficult and distant and not herself. One evening, Daniel sat down across from her at the kitchen table and said, very quietly, "Sophomore, I want to take you to see someone. A doctor. Someone who can help with what's happening." The voice was in her ear before he finished the sentence. "He's trying to get rid of you. He's been looking for a reason to say you're unstable. He wants to put you somewhere so he doesn't have to deal with you anymore." Sophia stood up and said something to her brother that she would spend a long time afterwards wishing she could take back. Something that used his fear for her as a weapon against him. Something that came from the voice rather than from her, but that came out of her mouth and her voice and landed in his face like something physical. Daniel left the apartment without another word. Sophia sat alone in the kitchen for a long time after he left. The voice was quiet, the way it was always quiet right after she did what it wanted, a brief silence that felt like satisfaction rather than peace. She looked at the kitchen window. Outside, the Charleston night was warm and heavy. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. Somewhere down the block, someone was playing music, something slow and quiet that drifted in through the screen. She thought about what she had said to Daniel. She thought about Amber's face when Sophia had dismissed her concern for the 3rd time. She thought about sitting in Pastor Whitfield's office and describing 6 weeks of a voice that told her nobody loved her, and Pastor Whitfield listening with complete attention and the specific quality of the
create. You can only corrupt what is already there. And yet here we are, the reflection said. And she is still mine. She opened the door. She listened. She believed. Every time she believed, she gave me more. She also stopped, Daniel said. The reflection looked at him. Did she? Yes, Sophia said. She stepped forward. This was not what Pastor Whitfield had advised. He had specifically advised against direct engagement. Sophia did it anyway because she was 23 years old and she had spent 6 weeks being told she was weak and she was done. I know what you are, Sophia said to her own reflection. You're not my fears. You're not the truth about me. You're something that found my fears and moved in and called itself the truth. And the only power you ever had was the power I gave you. Very therapeutic, the reflection said. Very. And I want it back, Sophia said. Pastor Whitfield began. He had been a pastor for 30 years, and he had done this once before, under different circumstances, with a different outcome, and he had prayed every day since then that he would never have to do it again. He did it now with the particular steadiness of a man who is afraid and is doing the thing anyway. Daniel held his sister's hand. The mirror cracked. Not dramatically, not all at once. A single crack appeared in the upper left corner and spread slowly across the surface in a branching pattern like frost on a winter window. The reflection inside the mirror became fractured, split across multiple planes of glass, each fragment showing a different version of Sophia's face. Some of them looked afraid. Some of them looked angry. Some of them looked like something that had never been Sophia at all. The room shook. The windows blew in. Rain came through the broken frames and hit the floorboards in dark, spreading patches. The shadows in the corners contracted and then expanded and then contracted again as if the room was breathing. The voice in Sophia's ear screamed. She had never heard it scream before. She had heard it whisper and insinuate and reason and manipulate, but she had never heard it make a sound that was simply desperate, simply the sound of something that was losing and knew it and could not stop it. Pastor Whitfield finished. The mirror exploded, not violently, not in shards that flew across the room. It imploded, collapsing inward on itself, every fragment of glass falling straight down to the floor in a sound like a long, heavy exhalation. The frame stood empty for a moment, a black rectangle against the wall, and then it fell too, landing face down on the floorboards with a sound like a door closing. The room went completely dark, completely still, completely silent. Then the silence was just silence. Not the heavy, pregnant silence of something present and waiting. Just silence. The ordinary silence of an empty room in an old house in the rain. Sophia let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for 6 weeks. Is it? Daniel started. Yes, Pastor Whitfield said. He sounded tired in a very specific way. For now, Sophia said. These things, he said carefully, find new doors, new vulnerabilities, new people who are afraid enough and alone enough to listen. I cannot promise you it won't happen again. Somewhere. To someone. They stood in the empty fourth room of the Hargrove house for a while longer. The rain continued. The lightning moved further away, the flashes coming less frequently, the thunder following several seconds behind. Sophia looked at the empty wall where the mirror had been. She did not feel triumphant. She felt wrung out and sad and tired and honest in a way that she had not felt in a long time. Honest about the fears that had been there before the voice arrived, and that were still there now. The real fears, the ones that were hers, the ones she would have to actually address rather than have reflected back at her by something that fed on them. Daniel, she said. Yeah, I know you love me. A pause. Obviously, he said. She smiled. It was small. It was real. They walked out of the Hargrove house and down the overgrown driveway and through the rusted open gate to where their cars were parked on Cypress Hill Road. The rain had softened to a mist. The streetlights made halos in the low fog. Charleston smelled the way it always smelled after heavy rain, clean and green and very old. Sophia sat in her car for a moment before starting the engine. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her reflection looked back. Just her. Just Sophia. She started the car and drove home. 3 weeks later, on a quiet Tuesday evening, a college student named Madison Webb was sitting alone in her dorm room on the campus of the Citadel in Charleston. She had just had a fight with her roommate. She was feeling the particular loneliness of someone who worries that the fight is not just a fight, but evidence of something larger and more permanent. The kind of loneliness that looks for confirmation. The room was quiet. Outside her window, the old city of Charleston went about its evening. Church bells, traffic, somewhere nearby, music. Madison was staring at her phone, not texting anyone, just holding it when she felt it. Right next to her ear, a warmth, a presence. Your roommate doesn't actually like you, the voice said. You've always suspected it. Don't you think it's time to? Madison put down her phone. She sat very still for a moment. Then she picked up her phone again
and called her roommate. "Hey," she said when the call connected. "I'm sorry about earlier. Can we talk?" In the old house on Cypress Hill Road, in the empty fourth room on the second floor, in the dark where the mirror used to be, something shifted and went looking for another door. The end ghost.